that is now 6 losses for UCF as they fall to Arizona State 35-31 in a game that many view as a winnable game for UCF. What were the problems that led to this one? Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Charge On. As always, I'm your host, Sean Green. Before we get started, a quick word from our sponsor, BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds in everything from football, NBA, and college basketball, NHL to UFC and MMA, head to BetOnline today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. Again, did a live watch along for this game. I want to thank all of you who came and tuned in. I'm really close to I'm just doing this live because I'm really close to the camera. I should have figured that one out, but we do it live. Did a live watch along. Thank everybody who tuned in. As always, there's so much fun to do. Even when we lose, that's kind of the bright spot for us is we get to hang out with you guys and hear from you guys. But rough one, and not in a way that you would think. It wasn't a blowout, but it was another one of those games, Nick, where we talked about it, and this is going to be more of a half-hour, I guess, condensed, but a little bit more thorough explanation of why UCF these games kind of keep happening, where UCF has the opportunity to win, but about 3, 4, 5 plays in the game, which is usually how football works, decided this one.
Yep. I'll just get straight to it. UCF outplayed Arizona State today, or tonight on the road. 406 yards to 260. Outgained them through the air, outgained them through the ground. They had the time of possession. They had the time of possession battle for the entirety of the night. It got a little more even at the end of the game, but for a while they had it by a large margin. The problem is that UCF played against themselves tonight as well, which has been a common theme. And tonight, they quite literally wrote a book on how to shoot yourself in the foot over and over and over and over. And like you mentioned, there's usually a handful of plays that you can point to where it's like, that changed the game, that changed the game, that changed the game. And that decides who wins these, and that decides who ultimately wins the game. And I said it on the post-game live show, or the watch-along rather that we did. I'll run through those plays again real quick. The Christian Peterson air, whatever you want to call it there, on the kick return before half was what started this, right? We had the Dylan Risk pick 6 from the 1-yard line when there was 53 seconds left in the half, I believe. Arizona State had no timeouts. That ball should have never been thrown. That call should have never been made, quite frankly. Tim Harris Jr. for the second game in a row generally called a good game, but that was a bad moment. That was a bad moment. The decision to go for it, or to kick a field goal on 4th and 2 when you were up 31-28, a field goal would not have given you a 2-score lead. It just would have padded your 1-score lead even further. Your special teams was a disaster all night up to that point. And Grant Reddick doinks for the second time in the game. That was a big moment. Backtracking, because there's so many to go through. How could I skip over this one? The blocked punt that was returned for a touchdown, where your 2 blockers that are right in front of McCarthy just completely whiff or look like they gave pretty minimal effort, to be honest with you, to try to even stop the rushers that were coming free. You had that. You also had a moment in the game, Sean, UCF also winning the game at this time in third quarter, where Nigel Kelly gets a big sack. It would have been 3rd and 25. Oh, but he grabbed his face mask pretty violently, might I add. And so 3rd and 25 goes to automatic first down, and guess what? Arizona State scored on that drive. And then you have which I'm sure we'll get into because I know we defer on this, the couple Wildcat calls that were made in this game, and especially on the 4th and 2, the last time UCF's offense got to touch the football, when they were backed up on their own 30-something. It was right before the 40-yard line, I believe, and they went for it, which we all agreed was the move. Go for it. We can debate the play call. It was the Wildcat. They did not get it. So all those things sort of just, and then 9 penalties for 80 yards. 9 penalties for 80 yards. 5 of them false start penalties, by the way, including on a punt. Special teams was a disaster. Disaster all night. Terrible. All those things sort of just add up over time. And when you're playing an opponent like Arizona State, even without their best player at Scadaboo, you can't get away with it. And it looked like they tried. It was like this was like a test of how many things can we do to ourselves and try to get away with it. And it caught up to them. They outplayed Arizona State. They should have won the game, but they did not earn the victory because they shot themselves in the foot. And that's the story of the 2024 UCF season.
We don't need to do the rest of the podcast. You just mentioned all the issues and all the problems that happened tonight, and that basically sums it up. But I think this is what makes UCF was that team tonight where good teams play and the good teams have a really bad night, but they still win the game, and they can go in the post-game press conferences and say, we didn't deserve to win. We played a terrible game. We need to get better. But they still won the game. UCF was that team. UCF was the team that gave the good team a run for their money and fought valiantly and should have won, but they make so many mistakes in a given game that you end up losing. And we can talk about coaching, right? I get it. That was the hot topic in our live watch along after the game was the coaching decisions. And we can talk about the Dylan Risk interception. We could talk about Peterson, a fair catch. We could talk about the penalties. We could talk about all of it. At the end of the day, we've said it. This is a bad football team. It just is. Nothing has changed except a couple things. UCF might have found a quarterback. They might have. And we'll get into Dylan's play today. And I do think they found an offensive coordinator that I would like to see more out of in Tim Harris Jr. I like what I've seen out of Addison Williams. I guess I'm saying the positives now. I think I like what I've seen out of Addison Williams and the way that he's called the defense. But at the end of the day, UCF is the team that we thought they were. We said not to get too high after Arizona. Me and Nick have both said we think this is a 5-win football team, that they would not go to a bowl game. And we still felt that way prior. We both picked Arizona State to win, even with Scadaboo out. Arizona State is a good football team. I don't think they're great, but they are good, and they give you a lot of fits. Let's talk about all the errors, right? Let's just compile them. Nick mentioned them all. There was a lot of them. The Christian Peterson one changed the game. Like, call it like it is. You can blame the not going forward on 4th 2 at the end. You can blame the Wildcat plays, which we're going to get into the Wildcat, because that is a discussion that will for sure be a discussion. That was the play of the game. Special teams, the blocked punt, and you can make the argument it really started with the blocked punt that went for a touchdown, because ultimately that tied the game. It was early, 7-7. You make a mistake there. Who knows what could happen? But too many mistakes are happening because of special teams. You allowed 14 points off special teams, because I don't consider the defensive touchdown interception. That was a special teams error that led to a dumb coaching decision by calling it. And listen, you got to give Tim Harris that. He did make a dumb call to throw it with 53 seconds left where Arizona State had one timeout. You run the ball there, you go into the half. Like,
no timeouts.
No time. Well, when I say one, the only reason they called the timeout was because they wanted them to look at it upstairs to see if it was a safety. They had one timeout and they called the timeout for them to look. But one timeout, going to no timeouts, and then you go throw the interception. You have 2 Grant Reddick missed field goals which was 6 points. So realistically, due to special teams errors, it was a 20-point swing. You have to look at it as a 20-point swing. Though the 57-yarder, again, that's a tough field goal anyway, but you get the point. It was a field goal that could have been made. He had the leg for it, it missed. This is the same story as last year, folks. Go back and look. We're just a week behind. We are following the same script as last year. Me and Nick kind of figured that out. We're just a week behind. Last season, what happened? We're actually worse because last season we were 5-5 heading in to the final 2 games. We were 5-5. And you had to win 1 out of the last 2. This season, you're 4-6. And you don't get to have the 2-game difference to go to a bowl game. You have to win the next 2 if you want to go to a bowl game. So they're tracking worse, but the games are going similar. This was Texas Tech 2.0, just with a little bit more scoring, Nick. It was just with a little bit more scoring from UCF's offense, but the same mental errors and errors on special teams ultimately was a big reason why they lost.
Yeah, it's the same things that rear their ugly head week after week after week. And you mentioned it's why it's like after the Arizona game, it was hard for us to like evaluate that game as it was, and then also like try to put it into context of like, what does this mean actually moving forward? Is this like a turning of the tide or anything? Well, no, Arizona is just a really bad football team. They're worse than you by a lot. Like that's really all you can take away from it. And UCF, the reality is, during this skid that they've been on, Cincinnati, I know they lost. They dropped a game to West Virginia that people mostly would not have picked them to lose. But they're a decent Big 12 team. You were in that game. Iowa State is an 8-2 football team. You outplayed them for stretches of that game on the road. Probably should have won that football game. And then now against Arizona State, another good team in your conference, you were right there with them, outplayed them, but there's a common theme in all of these losses, and it's just continuing to shoot yourself in the foot. And it's getting old. It's getting old for me. It's getting old for everybody, I think. And you mentioned it. We're on the plane now where they have to win the final 2 games to become bowl eligible, and becoming bowl eligible was not the goal coming into the season, right? Like Gus Malzahn said last year that what they did winning 6 games was unacceptable for him, and that they were going all the chips were in, right? They had a veteran roster. They brought in all these transfers, and then they were going to mix in some of the young guys. And this was going to be the year that they kind of make some noise. Maybe not contend for a Big 12 title, but show some progress. And I don't see progress. If I do, in certain areas, maybe minimal at best. I don't see progress. And that's a tough thing to sell when you look at some of the other programs around you that are showing clear signs of progress where you're not. And so, again, we're just stuck in a cycle where they're spinning their wheels. And, it's at this point, like I said on the watch along, I'm numb to it. I'm just numb to it, Sean. I'm so numb to it. And I'm fighting these damn hiccups again, like I did on the watch along, and it's pissing me off. Goodness gracious.
Yeah, for those of you, Nick had the hiccups during the watch along, and now they're back. So
I had them for like an hour on the watch along. They went away, and then we start recording this one, and all of a sudden they're back. It's like I can't catch a break tonight.
Yeah. So hang in there with us. Hang in there with both of us as we go through this.
Yeah. But that was basically my final thought, my final wrap up on that thought. So you can continue.
Okay. Yeah, it is getting old. It is getting very old. It is getting tiring. Because it is the same stuff. It is the same mistakes. It is the same reasons for losing. I mean, I can think of a bunch of games or a couple games last year where they lost, where special teams was the issue and certain play calls were the issue. And, it's frustrating. It's frustrating. But at the end of the day, this is who UCF is. This is why people want Gus gone. Because at the end of the day, the head coach is the head coach. And
I
players...
was going to say that. The what is on that field is a reflection of the head coach. Everything you see on the field is a reflection of the head coach and the coaching staff. And all the miscues that I counted down and what we've talked about, to me, that's a reflection of a poorly coached team, is to me what it all boils down to. So I do think there is plenty of room of criticism to be directed towards this coaching staff.
100%. Let's quickly, I want to grab this before we talk about individual performances. Let's quickly talk about the Wildcat calls. I think me and you, at first, with the first 4th and 2, that when they didn't go for it, I was kind of like, I understand the field goal, to go up by 6. I know it's still a 1-possession game, but it's weird. Like, when we get into the fourth quarter, I think those who watch this team and those who cover this team, like me and you, we understand what's coming. We have a feeling, we have a feel for the game, and we have a feeling, okay, Arizona State's probably going to go score here. So the thought process was go for it on 4th and 2 to kind of get up by 2 scores, try to go put the ball in the end zone, rush some clock down. I think in the moment I understood the field goal. I understood it, and I was okay with it. Missed the field goal. You can make they should have gone for it, but it's neither here nor there. It's another special teams miscue. Then people are now making the call of the Wildcat on back-to-back kind of needed drives. They said it's a horrible play, and they want it out of the playbook, and nobody wants the Wildcat, and it didn't work the first time, so why are you doing it the second time? Here's my little spiel on it. I'm not going to get too deep into it, because people want to then blame Gus for it and blame the play call and whatever. Blaming the play call last year versus Oklahoma, where on the 2-point conversion play where it was just a ridiculous play call, you blame that. If you go back and watch UCF games for the last even 2 years, the RJ Harvey Wildcat play has worked probably 9 out of every 10 times. Well, tonight, it didn't work back-to-back. And again, this is not like a 15-minute discussion. This is very quick. But I'm personally okay with the decision. I am personally okay with running the Wildcat. It wasn't Gus that called it. It was Tim Harris Jr. I was okay with it. It didn't get run how it needed to get run. Arizona State made a good play. That's what I'm chalking it up to. I don't think it was a bad play call. But it's funny because all the people that love the Wildcat because it worked all the time, now all of a sudden because it didn't work in this game, don't want it and love it and want it taken out. You can't have it both ways. It didn't work this game. They tried it twice. It didn't work. Tell me the last time it didn't work 2 times in one game. That's all I'm saying. It ultimately didn't matter. It would have kept the drive going and they could have maybe scored a touchdown, but there was more dire problems that happened. But I just wanted to get that out there, and Nick, I'll let you kind of respond to it. But it was not the reason UCF lost that game, and also it's a play that works well for them.
I mean, I understand it's a play that's worked well with them in the past. It's just it didn't work well. We went to that play in 2 very pivotal moments of the game. In a game where this isn't like the offense that we saw 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks ago, where going to a straight Wildcat play with RJ Harvey doesn't seem like a bad idea because anything through the air is basically off limits, right? But in this game, you were moving the ball at will on them. To me, there was no need to get, I don't want to say fancy, but there was no need for the gimmicks or anything like that. I feel like if you would have just gone straight up ball v ball and turn around and hand it to RJ, let him do something, or come up with some creative play call like an end around or something like that they had success on it in this game before Javarius Johnson unfortunately got hurt with the leg injury. Like, that's mainly what I'm saying. Ironically, the Wildcat thing that's not the thing I'm most upset about, though, from the game. Like, the thing that upsets me the most about this game, realistically, is the 4th and 2 call to kick the field goal. Like, that to me, to me, that is the thing that I am irritated about. Because, like I said, kicking a field goal only gives you a 6-point lead. Like, it's not like you're taking a 2-score lead in that moment. Your field goal kicker is not exactly what I would call reliable right now. He might be, but right now he's not. I think that's clear for everybody to see. Even on the field goal he made, it was kind of like one of those low liners that didn't look like he hit it well. So I just don't understand that philosophy of, hey, I'm going to go have my field goal kicker who's not reliable kick a 46-yard field goal rather than having RJ Harvey try to get 2 yards in my offense that was moving at will to that point. Like, and you have a chance to get that first down and then score 7, and now you have a 2-score lead late in the game, and guess what? UCF probably wins the game after that. So that's what bothers me most, and it's just an example of what I would call playing not to lose. It's playing not to lose. To me, it's scared coaching, and I don't expect that from a head coach who's an offensive guy. You would think an offensive head coach wants to put up as many points as possible, try to leave no doubt. Just kicking a field goal there, like, okay. Like, Arizona State was still probably going to go back and score 7 of their own, and guess what? They have the lead then. So, I don't know. I just think thought process of that whole thing was really bad, and that's the thing that I'm probably most irritated about.
Yeah, and I think at first I was okay with it, and then when they did go down and score, I was like, yeah, they should have went for it. But that's kind of been UCF this season, Nick. There's been times where, like, I think it was the Colorado game or the BYU game. Maybe it was the BYU game where it was the 4th and 1, and they didn't go for it, and we're like, what are you doing? And then BYU on the next drive, it was a 4th and 2. They went for it and got it, and you're like, UCF's playing scared. I didn't get that UCF was playing scared, but it's certain decisions in playing not to lose, and they didn't do that in the first quarter. In the first quarter, they were playing to win.
To me, you're 4-5. You are 4-5. You've lost 5 of your last 6 games. Like, you're fighting to become bowl eligible. That's your new goal. You're on the road against a good football team. You got to pull out all the stops, in my opinion. Like, you don't have a dominant defense that you can say, hey, go get me a stop, and they're going to do it. Like, the defense generally was played good enough to win tonight. I don't want that to be lost in what I'm saying. But late in the game, they didn't exactly make the stops when they needed to. Now, did they? And we've become customary to that. But again, it boils down to the fact that they did not play. They had a disaster of an end to the first half, and then they had a disaster to the end of the game. And those are the 2 areas where you have to play your best football, and they did not. In Arizona State, you don't see them making these mistakes. You don't see them making those mistakes because they're a good football team, and you're not.
Yeah. No, 100%. And that's why I agree with you. And I think they'll probably look back at it and say that was, in the moment, a coaching decision they made that they might want to take back. Gus won't say that, but that's what happened. That's the decision they made, and they're going to have to live with it. And as now UCF goes to 4-6. Let's talk about some of the individual performances. Let's start with Dylan Risk, 24-34, 229 yards in that interception, 71% completion percentage. Listen, he had a 121.3 quarterback rating. We talked about it a little on the live watch along. He didn't do anything to lose the game. He did throw the interception, and I think it's like I don't even know how much you want to split the blame. Like, he is to blame for the interception. He threw it. It's not the throw you want. He didn't call the throw, and he wasn't the one that put them on the 1-yard line. So he probably gets 1/3 of the blame there. But at the end of the day, he helped drive you down the field in the second half to make sure that didn't hurt you. So I think my overall take on Dylan Risk is I thought he had a good game. I'm excited to see him the next 2 games. I'm excited to see what he can do, because I think from what we've seen so far, he has a very good chance to be the guy for UCF. He has a lot of good traits that I like. I just need to see more, and that's not a bad or a good thing. That's just, I've seen 2 games of him, and I think he played pretty well for his first road game as a starter.
Yeah, I thought Dylan played well tonight. I thought he played well enough to win the game, actually. The interception we already sort of covered. He should have been put in that spot. And it was a great play made by the corner, whose name escapes me, but I know he was number 3. A couple balls came out a little high in the second half, but I thought generally he had a really good connection with Kobe. He had a great connection, actually, with Jacoby Jones. Jacoby Jones was probably the unsung guy of the night. I think everybody's going to point to RJ Harvey, and of course, and we're talking about risk, but I thought Jacoby Jones played, once again, third consecutive game that he has absolutely showed up, and I think that's part of, we were expecting some big things out of him coming from Ohio as the transfer and the numbers he put up there, but we also have to keep in mind, he's coming off a major surgery. It took time for him clearly to get adjusted to everything, get his confidence back up, play in the offense, and he's a legitimate threat out there. So, especially on third downs, he seemed to be Dylan's sort of safety blanket on those third downs. And a lot of them were too where Dylan was rolling out of the pocket, making some throws on the run, keeping his eyes downfield. So I thought you still saw good things from Dylan Riss tonight. It was never going to look like it did against Arizona. That was clearly a one-off. We always knew that was going to be probably a one-off. But for the second straight week, you saw the offense really look like the offense of what we were expecting coming into the season with a different quarterback. But it's Dylan, and now we look forward to seeing him finish this season for the next 2 games and potentially being the guy in the future. Whereas 2 weeks ago, we thought Dylan Riss was a slam dunk to hit the transfer portal. So it's crazy how things work.
Yeah, no, I mean, we thought that, and now you're looking at it like he's QB1 potentially next year, and that's why I'm not willing to say that he is going to be QB1 next year, but he's certainly playing like that, and he's got a lot of good traits that I like. I mean, if you look at the UCF receiving core today, Kobe had 10 targets, Jacoby Jones had 10 targets, Randy Pittman had 4 targets. So it's just, again, it's spread out a little bit to where you're getting a bunch of guys involved that weren't. It was Kobe or anything, or nothing, basically. And then you had RJ Harvey. I don't think, and that's kind of what's lost on this. He had 25 carries for 127 yards, 3 touchdowns. He's 5 touchdowns away from tying the all-time touchdown record. It stinks that this is the season because, I'm going to say that stat line, and we're going to just kind of move on. I'm going to move on from it.
Yeah, he became the second leading rusher in college football this year after this game.
Yeah. So it's like...
And the other dude ahead of him is just an alien. So
yeah. So it's like, for us, it's tough because, unfortunately, those performances don't matter. Or they do matter, but they don't matter in the grand scheme of things because at the day, he didn't win the game. And I'm sure RJ Harvey would say the same thing. So we say the stat line. We're going to say, hey, RJ Harvey had a really good game. And then we're going to move on to the defense, because that's just how this goes. And it stinks. You're seeing one of the best performances of a running back in UCF history. You're seeing one of the best running backs in UCF history. And it's kind of just tainted. I think that's how people, when you watch Kevin Smith at UCF, when people watch Kevin Smith, that's kind of how it felt with him. Because it's like you're watching just an animal, and UCF's not very good. But there's only one real bright spot for the whole season, and it's been RJ Harvey.
Yeah, he's the one constant. That's probably the right word I could use, is he's the constant.
Yep.
Even through all the disarray around him, and how he has to make most of his yardage on his own. He's not getting help up front. I think we can see that. He's doing a lot of it on his own. So hats off to that dude. Continuing to fight, continuing to put up numbers. We'll see what happens with his draft stock when we get into the off season, but you have to think that people are starting to take notice of him for sure. I was just scrolling through here, and I found this here from Chris Cartman of Sun Devil Source, and he actually, because we were talking about how it felt like UCF deserved to win that game, or at least outplayed Arizona State. And it's funny, I saw this. Kenny Dillingham said after the game that they played poorly and coached poorly, and said they did not deserve to win, and that they did not play with enough of a chip on their shoulder, and they need better next week against Kansas State. And again, that's coming from Kenny Dillingham. It's not just me saying it. That's from their head coach. And I mean, you could tell that guy's got things going in the right direction when that's the reaction after a win like that.
Yeah. And instead of like against TCU, we got, not much of that. It was all sunshine and rainbows that we came back and won. But offense did fine. Defense, I don't even know defensive stats. There wasn't really Quadric Bullard, I think, is the one that really stood out. He played great today. X-Ray Alexander, again, tied for the lead in tackles for this game. Again, it's not really the defense. I mean, they had 7 tackles for loss today, only 2 sacks. But the defense, in my opinion, wasn't the reason you lost this game. We don't need to go in depth with the defense. The defense is the defense. They give you 4 stops in a game, and you have to be able to capitalize on them.
Yeah, and then the final numbers, I mean, they gave up 161 yards passing. They gave up less than 100 yards on the ground, and it was a 3.1 yards average per carry. And again, Scadaboo didn't play, so take that for what it is. But, the numbers did not get crazy for what Arizona State did offensively. But the one dude who we knew could beat you was Jordan Tyson, and he did that. 7 for 99 and 2 touchdowns, and he had a drive there in the third quarter. He just completely took it over. He made the big catch down the field where I think it was Quadric and Sheldon Arnold maybe in coverage. He came down with that play, and then he got chasing near the goal line for a touchdown to finish that drive. And then later in the game, in the fourth quarter, I think this was the game-winning score actually, was the throw from Levitt to him where he completely just manhandled Antoine Jackson.
Yep. Who
we questioned then why was Antoine Jackson matched up against their best player? They're really the only threat they had all night. That's interesting. But that was the one guy that couldn't beat you, and unfortunately he's the guy that did beat you.
Yeah. And I do give the defense a ton of credit. I think we've been doing it all year.
But they're not to blame.
No. I mean, they gave up 21 points. And at the end of the day, at some point you have to start looking yourself in the mirror and say, what's the issue? Because the defense really hasn't been the issue for a majority of the season, maybe a couple games.
I mean, if you look recently, Cincinnati, they gave up 19 points.
Yep.
Iowa State, they gifted you 2 touchdowns. BYU, everything was awful. Yeah. And then last week they played great. And then in this game, they only gave up 21 points
I think they've had really 2 really bad games. You can make the argument they had a really bad half against TCU. But they had 2 bad games. Besides that, they were never the reason you lose games.
They were bad. They were bad in the first half against Florida.
Oh, well, yeah.
They were bad against Colorado, which was compounded by the fact that there were 1 million turnovers in that game by UCF. And then BYU.
Yep. But besides that, when can you have said that about a UCF defense that they haven't played that bad this season?
No, and it's unfortunately, it's not one of those things where like before you could be like, okay, the defense did this, but the offense didn't do this. The offense did this, but the defense didn't do that. Tonight, it was the special team. It was the special teams. Just disaster. Just your special teams cannot give the other team 14 points. I mean, just full stop right there. Just can't happen. You gave them 14 points and you left 6 offensively. That's quite a swing right there. That's the game.
Yep, 20 point. That's a 20-point swing. Like that's 20 points, 14 against 6 that you could have had. That it's not as bad of a watch as we were watching, but it's still. When you watch bad football and bad execution, it is hard to watch. But at the same time, I guess the positive is at least these games are more watchable than what we were watching this entire year. They're more watchable. The team has improved, which you would hope after 10 games that they would have improved. They are. And I don't know what we're going to talk about on this week's pod. I really don't. It'll probably come to me during the week. But one thing is for sure, serious questions are going to need to be asked these final 3 weeks. We have a lot of time to ask those questions, but I think I don't know if the boiling point is hit it or not hit or still almost there, but the program's reaching a boiling point where you're winning game or you're losing games that you have every chance to win, and it's a bunch. If you look at the last 2, even 3 years, there's a lot of these games. So it's frustrating to have to talk about them after they happen. But 2 more opportunities for UCF to close the season on a strong note. You have a bye week next week, so hopefully they can get whatever they need to get sorted out. Nick, any final thoughts before we close this one out?
We're on to West Virginia.
We're on to a bye week.
Oh, thank goodness for that. We're on to bye week, and then we're on to West Virginia, country roads. Yeah, like I said, I'm numb. I'm numb to these sort of losses at this point. There's not much else to say without sounding repetitive at this point. Thank you everybody again that stuck around with us during the watch along. We were live for like 5 hours, but we appreciate it. The interaction makes it makes everything enjoyable for us. Even when the result is what it is, it makes it very enjoyable for us to do that. So we certainly appreciate it. Gus is going to speak on Monday. I'm assuming that you're going to be in there, Sean. So we'll hopefully get some more thorough answers to some of the stuff we saw in this game.
I wonder if we'll talk to Gus.
Yeah,
maybe
it could
we
be.
Won't.
Could be odd. I don't know with the bye week. I'm not sure.
I know we didn't talk to him the last bye week, but I am intrigued. I'm assuming we'll talk to coordinators tomorrow, which I will not be at, or today, as you guys are watching. The last UCF has won 1 game since the TCU game, and the TCU game was on the 14th. So I guess you can make UCF since September 14th, so 2 months, has won 2 football games.
It's great.
Yeah,
it's great.
It's great. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like Nick said, live watch along. Appreciate everybody. I said it at the beginning. I'll say it at the end. You guys are awesome. We appreciate all you guys that support us and tune in to all of our content. It truly means the world to us, and we're going to continue doing what we love to do, which is bring you guys content, regardless if UCF is good or not. Please like, subscribe, comment, share, do all that you do. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. I mentioned it on the live watch along. I'll mention it here. Most likely pod dropping Thursday or Friday this week. I'm going to be kind of more so, I think a recap of the season is kind of silly. We know how bad the season has gone. So I think we'll talk more generalized things surrounding the team. I think maybe you guys can guess one of them, which is the head coach. So we'll probably get into that. So for all you Fire Gus people, make sure you tune in this week because that'll be a large discussion for the podcast. But thank you so much for tuning in as always. This has been Charge On, presented by Bet Online. We will see you this week.